We're continuing with the adventures of Yaakov, the third of the fathers of Judaism. And now Yaakov is going to the house of Lavan to give birth to the 12 tribes of Israel. And Lavan is a totally dishonest person. What can we do? His daughters were the ones that Yaakov had to marry in order to establish the Bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people. So, okay, yeah, what did we learn yesterday? That Yaakov went to this well. He was on his way to Lavan, and he went to a well, and there he meets Rachel. He sees Rachel, and he says, "This is the lady I want." And she runs and she tells her father Lavan, and Lavan runs to see Yaakov. He hugs him, he kisses him, figures maybe he's got some money hidden around him or maybe in his mouth, and finally says, "Okay, I want to marry your daughter." This is Yaakov et Rachel. Yaakov loved Rachel. Paul Marty said, "I will serve you or work for you 7 years for your daughter, your youngest daughter, Rachel. 7 years I'll work." What are you saying? So these are the few days that his mother said that Yeshevadim mo yomim achadim. He said, "Go to your brother." When Rivka, Yaakov's mother, heard, some say by Ruach HaKodesh, by any case, when she discovered that her other son, Esav, wanted to kill Yaakov, twin brothers, right? One wanted to kill the other one. So she told him, "Run to my," Rivka said, "Run to my brother who lives in Haran and stay there for a few days." So it ends up, these are the few days, these 7 years. Well, 7 years for your youngest daughter. These are the few days. He's talking about 7 years is a few days. 7 years is a few days? Yes, you're going to see in a few sentences that it says that Yaakov served for Rachel, worked for Rachel 7 years, and it was just like a few days. Here, Yaakov did 7 days, and it was in his eyes just like a few days, because he loved her so much. You know, you're going to see the reason he loved her so much was because he realized that the tribes were to come from her. And even though we're going to see that she really only had 2 children of the 12 children, the 13, Dinah was also born. But from the 12 sons, she only had 2 of them. But one of those sons was going to be Yosef. And Yosef was going to save the whole world. In any case, Yaakov he wanted to marry Rachel. That's who he was. So he said, "I want to serve 7 years for Rachel, your smallest daughter." He had 2 daughters. One was Rachel, and the other one was Leah. So all he had to do is, "I want to serve for Leah, for Rachel. I want to work 7 years for Rachel." Why does he have to say, "Rachel, your daughter, your smallest daughter"? Why does he have to say that? Obviously, he's going to work for its daughter. There's how many Rachels were there around there? Says Rashi, all these signs, why? Because he knew that Lavan was dishonest. He was a Ramai. If you would say, "I'm going to work 7 years for Rachel," as he'll bring some other lady from the street, change her name to Rachel. Therefore, he said, "Your daughter, Rachel." Maybe he'll say, okay, maybe he's going to transform Leah and Lachlif Leah Shmo. Maybe Leah will change her name. She'll be his daughter, and she'll change her name to Rachel. Therefore, he says, a katana, your smallest, the youngest. Leah won't be able to make herself younger. So there, it was closed. That's it. Yaakov made it impossible for Lavan to fool him. Signed the contract. I'll work 7 years, and I want Rachel, your daughter Rachel, not some Rachel from the street, and your small daughter Rachel, so that you don't get Leah to change her name. That's it. It's closed, right? Afal Pikin loyal didn't help. Sharino, in the end, he tricked him. Lavan said, it's better for me to give her to you than to give her to anybody else. So stay with me. What do you mean give her? What do you mean to give her? So the HaChaim says that Lavan was worried that maybe Yaakov would take him to court. See, I worked for 7 years for this lady, and he switched, because you're going to see he's going to switch. He's going to give him, in the nighttime, he's going to give him Leah. So he said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that he says Lavan said, I'm going to be sure that I tell Yaakov that's a gift I'm giving him. He's not wages. It's not a giving him wages. I'm giving him a gift. So therefore he said, Higdim lo more love what? He said, it's a gift. Titi, I'm going to only give it to you. So that Yaakov wouldn't come back and say, hey, I worked 7 years. I want this. He said, no, you work 7 years. The reason you work 7 years is because I like you. I like you, so I let you work for me for 7 years. Maybe Yaakov would understand that this was he'll say, hey, I want the reward for 7 years. So therefore he said, no, the reason that I'm letting you work over here is because I like you more than anybody else. That's what it says. Totiti, it's better that I should give her to you than to give her to somebody else. I chose you because what? You working with me. So therefore I'm giving you this free gift. What about your wages? I don't know. Listen, all the 7 years you worked, I gave you to eat. I gave you a place to sleep. You didn't sleep there, but it's not my fault. But the work you did because I like you, so I gave you the chance to work by me. What about my daughter? That's a free gift. A free gift I can give whoever I want to. Anyway, Yaakov works for Rachel. This is Lavan's justification. This is how how do you say, a criminal thinks. He's already got the excuse figured out before he makes the crime. He already got it figured out. So Yaakov worked for 7 years, and it was just like a few days by him. It was like nothing. And Yaakov said to Lavan, okay, bring my wife because my days are finished, and I will have relations with her. Have relations. Who says a thing like that? Why? Because my mother told me that when these days would be filled, he said, I'm getting older. Here it says, Yaakov, he says, my days are filled. What does it mean, my days are? How old was Yaakov when this whole thing happened? You know how old he was? 84 years old. Yaakov, when this whole story happened, he was 84 years old. That's how old he was. Yaakov, when here we're going to see, Shari Ben Pedal, Amosai, when am I going to stand up 12 tribes? That's what it says. I will have relations with her. Bring me my wife so that I can have marital relations with her. Even the most simple person off the street doesn't say a thing like that to his father-in-law. Ella Holy told us he wanted to have children. He didn't know how long he was going to live, and he was now 84 years old. How did he get to be 84 years old? he says he was 63 years old when he got the blessings from his father, Yaakov and Esau, when they fought. And then there was another 14 years. He left his father. Esau wanted to kill him, so he ran away for 14 years, and he learned Torah for 14 years. So that means that he was 63 and 14. That comes out to be 77. And then he worked for 7 years. He worked for Rachel 7 years. So that makes it, now it's 84. Right? 77 and 7 years is 84. So now he's 84 years old, and he says, hey, I don't have much time. I have to stand up 12 tribes. That's going to take me, bare minimum is going to take me 12 years. So bring my wife as soon as possible. So Vayesov Lavan, so what did Lavan do? Lavan gathered together a whole big Anshe Makom, all the people, and they made this big meal, wedding meal. Now, Yaakov worked for 7 years. He still has not had relations with his wife. He's not consumed the wedding. He worked for 7 years, and here's the big night. And so Lavan says, well, you're going to have relations with my daughter. You're going to consume the wedding. We got to make a big party, right? Big party. So he says, Lavan Ramai. Why did he make this big party? Because he was a dishonest person. He was a charlatan. Alkin, therefore, Lavan said, let's make a big party. He intended to get Yaakov drunk with wine in order to trick him and put Leah in there, which that's what he did anyway, without, and he wouldn't understand the difference between Rachel and Leah. Why do we say that? Why? Because what happened? In the end, he did put Leah in, right? He put Leah in the place of Rachel. Leah went into the place of Rachel, and he had relations with Rachel. He had relations, with Leah. And he's in the morning, he woke up and said, hey, what's going on over here? This is Leah. I didn't get married to you. I get married to Rachel. Hey, I've been fooled. So Lavan said, oh, yeah, that's the way we do things around here. We don't marry the young daughter first. We marry the older daughter. I guess there's some sort of misunderstanding. But, you can have my other daughter. So now he gives him the other daughter, Shalom. So now he's really gonna get married to Rachel, right? So they made the big party, and ended up this big party they made that for Leah, because Leah was the one that in fact he had relations with. It was Leah. So now he's going to get married to Rachel, right? So make another party. He says, no, with Rachel he didn't make a party. The whole reason for making this party was to get Yaakov drunk so that he would be able to fool him. Okay, Vayi be'erev, and it came to the evening. Vayikach Leah, and Lavan took Leah, his daughter, and they changed places. Leah and they changed places, and Yaakov had relations with Leah. And Lavan gave Zilpah to Leah, his daughter, for a shifcha. Why did he give us Zilpah was smaller, so usually they give a smaller one to the younger daughter. So he gave her Zilpah to Leah, even though she was older, to fool Yaakov. That's what it says somewhere. And the wedding happened. He had his nuptials that night. And in the morning, he woke up, stretched, said Modani, and he looks at his wife. He says, hey, you're not Rachel. This is Leah. And he said to Lavan, what did you do to me? He ran to her father and said, what's going on over here? I worked 7 years for your daughter, Rachel. I worked really good. Lama Rimitanu, why did you trick me? He said, it was in the morning and it was Leah. He says, but in the nighttime, it wasn't Leah. Why? What do you mean it wasn't? When did he change? He changed in the beginning of the night. They changed places. Said Yaakov he knew that Lavan was a cheater. So Yaakov agreed with Rachel and he said, listen, I want to make some signs with me. He gave her certain signs. She should say a certain thing. She should do certain things. And then I know that it's you. And when Rachel saw that they were putting Leah in the place, so she said, now my sister will be shamed. Yaakov will say, okay, remember the signs that we agreed on? Say the password. And she says, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, so he'll immediately realize that I'm being tricked. So what did Leah do? What did Rachel do? So she told her sister all of these secret signs and words to say. So Yaakov really thought that it was Rachel, and it wasn't. Yomer Lavan said, I'm sorry, we don't do that in our place, to give the younger one in front of the older one. Here's an interesting thing, the Daat Zkanim. It says like this: the whole night, Leah pretended like she was Rachel, and she gave 3 signs. It says, okay, what is it? Nida Chala. It's not important. In any case, so Yaakov said to her, as soon as he realized that it was Leah, so he realized what's going on over here, that her father is a dishonest person. He's a con man. And she also played along with it. She's also dishonest. Well, it says, Yaakov said to her, Rama'ita bat Ramai. You're a how do you say, a criminal, the daughter of a criminal. In the nighttime I said, Rachel, is that you? And you said, yes, it is. And all of a sudden I see, now you're calling yourself Leah. What did you do to me? How could you do such a crooked, disgusting thing? And Leah said back to him, he said, Omrle said, Gever the Leisle Talmidui Avuch Kori. He said, I am learning from you. Avuch Kori Lecha, your father. Remember Yitzchak? You remember Yaakov? You remember the whole story with your father and the blessings? What happened over there? You disguised yourself as Esav. And your father said, Kori Lech Esav. Your father said, is that you, Esav? And you answered him, and you said, yes, I am Esav. Koralecha Yaakov, when later on, when he called you Yaakov, you said, yes, I'm Yaakov. In other words, I learned from you. That's what it means, Rama'ot va'avuch, that you lied to your own father. Va'ana bach, and I'm answering your father. I'm sorry, you tricked your father and answered your father. He said, your king. I'm sorry. That your father said, I'm sorry, your father, Leah is saying to Yaakov, right? I tricked you. I just did what you did to your father. Your father, as soon as Esav came in and said, where's the blessing? You wanted to give me a blessing. Your father, Yitzchak, said, what can I do? Esav, your brother, came and he tricked me. Mirma, he tricked me. She's saying all this to Yaakov. And there's Yaakov, you're as big of a liar. You did it first. You tricked your father, and your father said, are you Esav? You said yes. Because of this, so Yaakov started to hate her. That's what it says, that God saw that Leah was despised. We're going to see this in a minute. Lavan said, I'm sorry, you're right, Yaakov. I understand that you're angry, but that's not the custom of this place. We don't marry off the younger daughters before the older daughters. I thought you knew that, right? Of course, he was totally lying to him. So he says, listen, let's make another deal. Malay Shavuos, let's fill up another week. Now he says this means just the 1 week of days. This is talking about the 7 blessings, the days, 7 days of blessing that you make after a wedding. He says, we're going to finish the 7 feast days, 7 days of feast that we make after a wedding. You just got married to my daughter, Leah, right? Mazel Tov. We're going to make a 7-day feast. And then after that, I'll give you Rachel immediately, and you can work for 7 years after that. That's what he says. Okay. Immediately, I'll give Rachel to you immediately after the 7 joyous days of feasting that we're going to make after this wedding. You just got married to Leah. After the 7 days, so I'll give you Rachel, and then you work for another 7 years for me. Okay, now what's the big deal? Yaakov did it. And he worked for another 7 years, and he gave Rachel his daughter. Lavan gave to Rachel a maidservant called Bilhah. Now we're going to see this is important because Bilhah and Zilpah, they're also going to give birth to children, and they're going to be part of the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, now Yaakov had relations with Rachel. That's what he wanted to have in the beginning. And he loved Rachel more than Leah. And then he worked 7 more years, right? And he says 7 more years, just like the first years he worked with total faith. Also, the last years he worked with faith. Even though that he tricked him, nevertheless, he said, I kept my word. Okay, God saw, now we're going to talk about the first four of the tribes. All of them are born to Leah. God saw that Leah was hated. And we said, why was she hated? So she was hated because she answered Yaakov back. She said, I've tricked you to like you tricked your father. And so she said, God saw that Leah was hated. She was despised. And he opened up her womb. And Rachel remained barren. And Leah got pregnant. And she gave birth to a son. And she said, my son is Reuven. That God saw my suffering. Now my husband will love me. Called it Reuven. The rabbis explain, Ru'u, see, Bain. See what's the difference between my son and the sons of Lavan. My son Reuven is not like the 2 sons. I'm sorry, made a mistake, another mistake. Ra'u, see, ma ben beni, oh, terrible. See, what is the difference between my son, leben chami, from the son of my father-in-law? In other words, what? Rachel had a son, Reuven. Her father-in-law was Yitzchak, right? The father of her husband, Yitzchak. He also had 2 sons. Esav sold his firstborn to Yaakov. Right? Esav sold the firstborn rights to Yaakov, and he hated him and he wanted to kill him. V'zeh lo machra liYosef v'lo ira alav. And this, Reuven, he never sold his firstborn rights to Yosef, but Yosef became the chosen one. Not only did Reuven did not mind that Yosef became the head. Yosef was but and even more, he wanted to save him from the pit. When the other brothers hated Yosef and wanted to kill him, so Reuven tried to save him. So in other words, I'm going to have 2 sons. I'm going to have a lot of sons. One of my sons, here's Reuven is the first one. Reuven is going to be usurped by the son of my sister, Yosef. Yosef is going to become the king. My son Reuven is not going to be jealous, and he's even going to try to save him. Let's have a look at the 2 sons of Yitzchak, my father-in-law, Esav and Yaakov. Yaakov took the firstbornship from Esav. Esav sold it to him, and Esav hated him all the time, wanted to kill him. Exactly the opposite of my son. My son Reuven, he didn't mind that he lost it, because Reuven was the firstborn. He didn't mind that he lost it. And not only that, he even tried to help the one who stole it from him, took it from him. But Tarot, she got pregnant again, and she gave birth to a son. And she said, Shema Hashem Kisnuati, God heard that I'm hated, and he gave me also this son, and his name was called Shimon. Then she got pregnant again, and she gave birth to a son, and said, now my husband will accompany me. She knew there were going to be 12 tribes, and she knew there were going to be 4 wives. So she had given her portion. We're going to see that the other 2 wives, she's going to give her handmaid, and Rachel's going to give her hand. Because I gave birth to him 3 sons, and therefore he called her name Levi. Levi means to be accompanied. Rashi says the mothers, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, they were all prophets, prophetesses. And they knew that there were going to be 12 tribes. Were going to come from Yaakov. And they knew that he was going to have 4 wives. So she said, now no one can criticize me. I've given my portion. I have my portion. I fulfilled my part, 3 sons. Therefore, anyone will say from now on, it says that Mishane'amar Bo'al Kain, Meruba Bachlusin. All of the other tribes had a lot of, were popular, had a lot of people, a lot of members, all the other tribes, except for Levi. Why? Because the ark, it said, would mishandling or touching the ark, this would kill them. They would die because of that. Shevet Levi, they carried the Aron HaKodesh, and therefore they couldn't be so careful, and they would die. A lot of them would die because they would touch the ark or whatever. It says all of them, it says, Korah Shemo Levi, that he called his name Levi. All the other tribes were called by their mothers. And here it says that he called his name Levi. Who is this? Says, all of them, it says that she called the names. But this one, it says that he called. There's a Medrash Haggadah that says that God sent an angel and brought Levi in front of him. And God was the one who called him the name Levi. And he gave him the 24 gifts of the priesthood, right? The tithes and things like that. And therefore, because Shelavu, because he was accompanied by all these gifts, so he was called Levi. So who called, all the other tribes were called by the mothers. The only one that was called by some masculine, some male, that was Levi. Who was the male? It was God. She got pregnant again, 4th time, and she gave birth to a son, and she said, now I'm giving praise, Odes Hashem. Therefore she came to her name, called his name Yehuda, and she stopped giving birth. Hapam, it says, Natalti Yoti Chelki, I've taken more than my portion. So now I should really give praise to the creator of the universe. Not only that, he said, Yehuda is going to confess on what he did with Tamar. Therefore I will give praises God. Also it says Yehuda, Sophrono, has the letters of God's name. Yehuda, Yud, and then Hey, and then Vav, and then Hey, and there's a Dalet also here. This breaks it up. Therefore, his name is Hodah, and it seems that all of these names of the previous ones, like we found Ruvain, Shimon, Yehudit, Badberi, and etc., Shmuel ben Aminah, Korah, Shmuel, and Navi, these were chosen from the names that were, that because of what happened there. All of the names of people, because of some occurrence or some sort of a reason that they had. And here, it's just called because he gave praise to God, Yehuda. And of course, Mashiach is going to come from Yehuda, and that's possibly the reason. And now we'll continue tomorrow, and we'll learn about the rest of the tribes that were given birth to by Leah and by the maidservants of Rachel and Leah, Bilhah and Zilpah. And finally, way in the end, Rachel gives birth to Yosef. That's going to be that's one. And when they're traveling, she gives birth to Benjamin, but she dies. Rachel dies in childbirth. But that's going to be later on, later Torah portion, as we're going to learn about, God willing, tomorrow. Have a good day with Mashiach, and I'll hope to see you at 8:15 tomorrow morning.